That's right.
So be it. Okay.
Okay. You do the thing.
All right. Sorry. I was going to go into wrestler voice immediately. Welcome. It's such a habit now.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to Voices from the Desert.
Desert.
Oh, the puppy. Hey, yeah, you don't like that, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the puppy's
Murray,
like, what the heck?
Murray's become. You know, what do they say? If you want to fly like the eagles, don't surround yourself with the chickens. Is that says something? You know that statement,
Something like that. Yeah.
So Murray has surrounded himself with dogs.
Yeah.
And now he's howling like the puppies.
Yeah, like I've threatened to get that power tool out.
You're
because the
becoming
dogs
like
hate
one
that.
of them.
They actually howl, but I've tried it. I've tried it now a few times outside.
Yeah,
to see if I could record it, but
no.
the sound of the tool may be more overpowering.
Probably.
Than the sounds of
that's
the dogs,
true.
right?
So maybe we'll give up on that one. Yeah, because anybody that's been following us,
I've threatened to do it numerous times.
That's true. If you're new to the podcast, you probably wouldn't know that Murray has 2 puppies hanging out just in front of him.
Oh boy!
And
sheepdogs, everybody. If anybody send us a note, we did not know Aislinn the sheepdog was pregnant. So purebred sheepdog puppies. We don't really want to sell them for money, but we sure want to make sure they get a really good home with probably kids and some land. And
Murray doesn't want 6 dogs hanging around. Yeah. But because it's a farm there, and everybody, Murray was telling me about not the ostrich, the
peacock.
Peacock.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I was going through weird birds. Peacock, flamingo, ostrich. Oh, peacock.
Emu.
Emu laid eggs in the neighboring field and was caring for the eggs, but would come back to the farm for water.
Yeah, every few days, like 3 days. I mean, amazing it could survive that.
And after a few days of that happening, when the peacock left, darting through the field came a fox that pillaged all the eggs from the nest.
Yeah. And that's the problem. He's been up on the bluff looking down,
planning the whole
2 or 3 days, just waiting.
When's biting my time? Yeah.
Why you got a bunch of
dogs.
That's
why you have the dogs. That's right.
Yeah. That's right. But even the neighbors, they let their dogs come in one night. They came out, chickens all gone, right? Just because they know, oh, you're not there. Oh, you're not out tonight. Okay. Like it's amazing how smart everybody is. So
you've got 6 dogs. You're becoming a bit like a dog.
Yeah. Hopefully
you've got a 7th that thinks it's a dog, which is the sheep.
Yeah, the dog sheep.
The dog sheep. So
either sheep dogs and dogs that sheep.
That's
so
right.
It has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I mean, my plan is these 2 youngins. Hopefully, they'll find good homes, and I can tell you though. My goodness, I know why they charge so much for puppies now, like the sleepless nights and
right.
You're on. And that's 2. I can't imagine. You know, my older sheepdogs came from litters of 12.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that somebody could keep their sanity, to be honest.
That's right. Yeah. Lots of counseling.
But anyway, if anybody, Sammy, the old guy, is on his way, so we'll probably be down to 3.
Well, you could give the dog, and then you invite the person you give the puppy away. And then you invite the person to some spiritual direction sessions that they have to pay for because you need to help them recover.
Well, that would work out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Could do that.
That first year, man, of taking care of a dog, there's.
Well, sure, change. what you think you should be doing and building, and now suddenly it's
for sure.
Like, nope, we're gonna have to put it off a month because I got to take care of puppies. And
we have a 3-year-old chocolate lab, and he was 9 weeks when we got him, and so there's a lot of work involved.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so, as much as the kids say they're going to do the work,
I will show you. For anybody who watches just the video version, there you go. I'll turn the camera around just for a second.
Oh, right there. Oh, lift it up a little bit.
Oh,
there it is. Yeah.
The other guy's in the little kennel behind that, and so he's a little. Look at her. She's
so
pretty
cute.
big. When I held her, she sat up and looked right at me.
Yeah. So, and with that, that gives us our segue to join our Patreon, because if you join our Patreon, you would have seen that video.
You've seen those puppies.
We're building a little community there on Patreon, and
Yeah,
people that
that's a
we're
great way
able
to
to
say it.
engage with and ask questions and suggest episode content. And we had
we'd
one
like
of
that.
our Patreon subscribers talking about a spiritual direction program that they're aware of, and
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, so for lay people especially, that
I
don't have the
wanted to. I
time.
want to look into that actually.
Yeah. So
What was it? Tabor?
Was it Talbot? Is that what it was?
Talbot. It was Talbot.
Yeah.
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 Tabor's a
And
town in
Talbot
Manitoba,
University.
full of
Yeah.
Mennonites.
And so anyway, join our Patreon. You'll see the link in the subscription or subscription. The Patreon is a subscription. And that's a way to support the channel
It's
and
a prescription.
and engage with us. And you get access to the video content and pre-roll footage of Murray and I planning episodes and talking about life, that kind of stuff.
Talking
you should have heard it was a doozy what Murray was talking about in the pre-roll this time, where
we'll see if we get there.
Yeah, we'll see if we get there. So
mocking somebody's name quite unintentionally. But I'll tell you why. True. I have a story behind why that happens, which I will talk about.
It wasn't a Freudian slip
episode. No, it was fairly pre-planned, but unfortunately, out of my own trauma, I will just say that.
And Murray's got a lot of it. He's got a lot of trauma. So
yeah, I am quite open about my church trauma.
Every one of the hairs
made me the man I am today.
Every one of the hairs on the right side of your head there is sprouted from a traumatic situation.
It's a badge of honor I wear now. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's like the conversation. I mean, many have heard you talk about the conversation with the monk who said you mentioned the church splits, and you might have more church splits under your belt than
than the whole Orthodox Church in 1,000 years.
Yeah, you're basically a Protestant reformer.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's split. Well, you've just been subject
to it. I'll throw in a crazy thought, and I'll throw the Vineyard guys under the bus here, because I am a Vineyard guy. I that's where I would feel most at home, I guess. But I wonder if
something's just right about a break between the worship and the preaching that includes coffee.
Yeah,
and Vineyard just always does that. That's you walk into a Vineyard.
I wonder, we came out of the Mennonite church and basically went into the Vineyard movement in a kind of a roundabout way. But and there is a real change in church culture, a massive change in church culture in many ways. But the thing that I wonder if Wimber made a mistake, and I'm sure Wimber would look, if he could come down, he would apologize for many things, right? So
I've got a story for you. I don't know if I can share though. Maybe
I remember it was Hank Hanegraaff, I think, said, because he was really, really hard on John Wimber. Who has converted to Orthodoxy, by the way, Hank Hanegraaff.
Talks about dead saints and praying to them.
Yeah, it's crazy after being hard on Wimber.
Yeah, it's sick. But the mystical presence of Jesus in the Eucharist.
Yeah.
But listening to Hanegraaff now is like
he would have called himself a heretic back in the 90s. But, that's right. But he still said Wimber was probably one of the most influential church reformers since Wesley. I mean, for him to say that after all the crap he gave him, it's quite something. But one of the things that I wonder, so the reason I say that is if we're going to pick on somebody's theology, we should also make a statement like that, because that's true about Wimber, right? Is that I wonder when somebody said, "Don't call me Pastor John. I don't call you Plumber Bob. I'm not what I do." I wonder, and so in the Vineyard movement, you have this really dumbing down of the value and status of a pastor.
Sure.
And from, the level of training, most Vineyard guys are lay people that they see the gift in and call them up. They often don't have the degrees or education you would have in an evangelical church. Maybe it doesn't matter. But the thing I found in churches like that is they split so much easier than other churches. And I think part of the problem is, well, I, as a layperson, hear God as well as the leadership does. Why should I think your way is right compared to my way?
Right.
If education doesn't matter, if training doesn't matter, if I can't call you, your title position doesn't matter, and we're equal in hearing God, why should I believe what you say is better than me? And I think they actually created, and I have, and I do think we want a level playing field, everybody. That's why I joined that church in the first place, was because it shouldn't be about your title, and it shouldn't be about your education. It should be about your relationship. But, there's a ditch on the other side of the road here. I think they invited church splits in a way. It's like, my group in the church doesn't agree with you, so we're just going to go over here because, well, you're obviously wrong. Your status, your title, your education doesn't mean nothing. Bye.
Well, and then they had their controversial thing. I think it was last year, maybe the year before, where the original vineyard in Anaheim split off.
There's a good example, right?
No longer calls themselves part of the vineyard, and the vineyard guys were like, well, how can you do that? It's, they tried to pull rank and authority, and you got a whole structure so that the disagreement was over the move in vineyard was towards more authority and control. Is we think the denomination head should have hiring and firing say. Maybe we should move away from elder run churches that are independently autonomous and have their own resources and own their own buildings, and we should maybe have more of a measure of control. And some of the churches were thinking that's a good thing, and some of them weren't, and the Anaheim Vineyard guys weren't, and they said, all right, sayonara, we see the writing on the wall, we're going. And so then a group of disgruntled people from there, including John Wimber's wife, sued it just became a huge mess, right? There's no it just illustrating what you're saying, right?
And
does that mean that more control and structure fixes that?
See, that's a problem. I don't think it does.
So
I would still lean towards that model personally. And even after church splits, I hate to say it. So I obviously need inner healing. So because the very thing I just criticized, I am in complete agreement with. So
cognitive dissonance.
There's some right there. There's some cognitive dissonance right there, because I'm like, I mean,
So basically,
I intentionally did not go get a doctorate degree because, and might still maybe someday.
But you have a master's, so yeah.
Well,
maybe we'll save that for the Patreon.
Well, the reason I did that, believe it or not, somebody said to me that if you want a relationship, if you want to talk to the Catholics, you want them to even listen to you, you have to have at least a master's degree.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I do believe that. I think I would like to pray and prophesy and introduce some of those guys to some of the stuff we have. And I think maybe the Lord would like to set that up. So I thought, well, okay, I can do that.
Masters.
So, but anyway, that's
that kind of, in a way, that segues us to the topic at hand for today and what we've been covering. Not the Masters thing, but looking at the, I think it's natural in terms of the conversation that, quote unquote, I hate this term, but we'll use it just for the sake of, cultural relevance, I guess. Church hurt,
because really the point we're going to here, really, in Father Luke's,
it can easily cause people that have been through difficult situations to go, well, like, these are definitely two rules that I won't listen to.
And if you listen to our stuff on Patreon, we discussed a little bit. It'll come up a little bit here, but we really tried to hash that out. Like, where are we going with this today? Because it's, anyway. All right. Let's get into these hard questions. Let's do it. Oh my goodness.
So
it's going to cause lots of trouble.
So
wait a minute.
It's a puppy. You're good?
Yeah, puppy. I see a tail sticking out under that blanket over there. Like, okay.
So again, we're going over the 10 rules of the spiritual life from an Orthodox abbot from the monastery in Nova Scotia. Check out the monastery, please. The Hermitage of the Annunciation, called the Goose Chase Monastery in New Germany, which you can.
But is it a wild goose chase?
Well, Goose Chase is the name of the road that they're on, so that's why it's called that. And
not a wild goose chase.
Not a wild goose chase. There is actually a pretty good documentary on YouTube about the monastery as well, which gives you an idea of their rhythms and what the monks are like. So Father Luke put together this short pamphlet for visitors, for the rules and life of the community. They'll call them rules of the spiritual life. These are guidelines or guideposts that point us in a particular way. So, it's funny that evangelicals, we kind of bristle at the word rules.
Yeah, we sure do.
But rules really just mean the guideposts that help us navigate
the spiritual principles.
Yeah. So yeah, you could say that and the evangelicals would be okay. The principles. You say rules and you're like, oh. Anyway, so we've been covering those, and essentially Murray and I, we wanted to do when covering these was look at a system of quote unquote system of the spiritual life, or an ethos or a practice of the spiritual life, and see how does that compare with some of the stuff, with what we're doing and some of the stuff that we were raised in and all of that. And we find commonality, we find differences. So if you're part of the Patreon, we've made this document available and for you to peruse. And if not, then you need to go to the monastery in New Germany to get one. And they have great stuff that you can purchase actually on their website, because the monks are always doing handiwork and stuff. Little books, and actually the best book I've ever read on Lectio Divina is from Father Luke, who wrote this.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Little booklet, a short little booklet. It's fantastic on reading the scriptures. So today we are covering points 5 and 6. And we've covered, the last point we covered last week was point 4, accept to remain dry. And we talked through that one, and we covered a couple other ones. And so points 5 and 6, we may only get through point 5. We'll see, because that's the one that kind of stirs up.
Yeah,
I think both of them stir up a little bit of, depending on the scope and what people hear. So point 5,
definitely got my inner drama stirred up here in the pre.
Like we said, there's lots of it. So
yeah, what button you want to push?
It's like, who can I ask to do a podcast with that has the most trauma, that will always get triggered, and so there'll always be stuff to talk about? My friend Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here, everybody.
That's why he's here. Yeah.
Gut level, emotional, Mennonite honesty.
There you go.
How does that go together? We don't
know. Yeah. So point 5 is trust, and point 6 is, just for future reference as we go through it, is accept to remain in darkness and confusion. So point 5, trust. Point 6, accept to remain in darkness and confusion. Again, guideposts for the spiritual life, right? These help us, point us in the right direction. So the subpoints of trust, and
here's where it gets into trouble.
And here's where it gets into trouble, because this depends on the scope that you're talking about. And again, we don't want to put words in Father Luke's.
Yeah, we almost need to have Father Mike come back on and go. Now, let's go through this again from an Orthodox point of view.
Yeah,
because we're really, everybody, giving you kind of our quasi Desert Father thinking here. So on our journey, what we're saying is, as compared to, let's say, Father Mike or Father Luke would say, maybe very different. Just so you know, that's good to know.
Point 5,
they are.
That's right.
Mind readers.
But we find these things helpful. Point 5, trust. Learn to accept. So the subpoints of point 5, describing trust, is learn to accept, right? Learn to receive and welcome, and be convinced that God watches you with love. Those are the subpoints of trust. And so as guideposts for the spiritual life. And I think one of the things Murray was saying before we went live, so the Patreon subscribers would have heard, is, well, by trust, is it meant, and by learning to accept and learning to receive and welcome, is trust. And this is where trust becomes an interesting issue, is because what some people do is they trust the church, they trust the denomination, right? They trust the church system. Some people trust the leader. And so what's being implied by trust and what's being meant by trust is I'm to trust the Father? Because then we go, great, we trust the Father. But when we trust the Father, what's the scope of trust then at that point? And so I think that's kind of what we were thinking about was, especially we've covered in other episodes. There was the Mike Bickle situation. There was the stuff with Morningstar. We're going further back, Rabbi Zacharias situation. There was
so much of it.
The Gateway Robert Morrison situation in Texas, right? There's Robert Morris, not Morrison, Robert Morris.
Yeah.
So you're just going like the litany of quote unquote institutions that people trusted and men and women that people trusted, and that completely failed and completely let down. And then probably every person listening has an experience in their life where they trusted a leader, where they trusted a whether it was a church community, they trusted people in the community, and they were hurt, they were betrayed, they were wounded, whatever. And then we also live in an age when any perceived slight, it seems like, from a leader can turn into, well, that was spiritual abuse of the highest order, or spiritual manipulation. And you're like, well, no, they just said something that hurt you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that was spiritual abuse. And so the term gets bandied around so much.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And I think when you peel back, and personally, when you peel back all the layers, and it's interesting because you could start getting into like attachment theory here, and the way people respond to.
Absolutely. That's absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. The way people respond to different situations and predicaments, and based on the style of attachment that was modeled to them by their parents and their foreign family of origin, right? Because some people that were raised in a secure attachment environment, where they had loving, caring parents who nurtured them and supported them and took care of their different stages of development and all of that, right? Trust becomes much more naturally, because trust is not so much, I can trust myself, right? Because I have a strong root and foundation within myself. And so trust comes more natural. Then you get people who are raised in an insecure attachment environment, and because there's secure and insecure attachment. And then the insecure attachment takes a number of different forms, fearful, avoidant, anxious. So people that are raised in that environment have a much more difficult time trusting, and even later in life have and actually anxious attachment tends to be the kind that propagates down the line. And that's so trust comes a little more difficult. It becomes a little more difficult in that sense. So then you could look at that, like, so trust in my mind has to start with, I trust the Father, I trust the Lord, I trust God. And I think Paul does this, right? He does this in Romans 8 when he talks about he'll work together, he'll work all things together for the good of those who love him, right? That's Romans 8. And I think I quoted that right. And so that the trust is not in the outcome, trust is not in the person, trust is not in the system, trust is not in the individual, trust is in the Father himself, that things will work out.
Yeah.
And therein lies the hard thing.
Or that even the fact that he's leading you through something.
Yeah, for sure.
Trust isn't that you're going to necessarily stay there. Trust can maybe be, Jacob says to Rachel and Leah, your father's face is no longer favorable to me. Time to go. Can I trust
right.
God that I can leave this bad relationship because I can trust God to lead me forward? Trust there isn't, I need to keep working for Laban because, hey, I'm a wet sack of rice and I deserve
Right.
to be abused,
Totally.
right? I mean, can we also trust God that we can say no?
Right. Well, and I think with you know, I remember I was uh, the church that Aaron and I were attending back in PEI before we moved. I was part of the preaching team, and I was preparing a message. We were working through Romans 8. And side note, NT Wright's just put out a great new book on Romans 8 that my dad keeps telling me I need to read.
Oh,
And so I need to get to that. I think we were doing the Romans 8 thing as a consequence of our pastor having read Romans 8. So I was tasked with Romans 8, I think 31 to 33 or something like that, which
all things are work together.
I think all things work together happens
A little bit later
just
than that,
before
maybe.
that.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then but it's the what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? That's the kind of the main verse in there that I keyed in on, verse 31. If God is for us, who can be against us? And that becomes, for some people, that becomes a rallying cry because of they want a particular political outcome, right? Like, if God's for us, we're going to take the Capitol. We're going to elect the right person. We want to set up a Christian state, so to speak, the city of God, right? Augustine.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying Augustine used that. I'm just saying people use that particular concept, right? That verse. And I realized
Even the
that,
Crusaders did.
yeah, if God is for us, who can be against us? That's our rallying cry.
God wills it. I think that was their big rallying
And
cry.
I realized when I was studying it, I was going, but that's not, the intent isn't for that to be a rallying cry and a banner that we march our army forth under. It's a statement of trust. It is that God's going to work all these things together. And it's not so much that now I can go build and do and conquer and accomplish because he's for me, so I can go do anything. Right. It's I trust him. And as a good father, he's caring for me. And so in everything I do, I know he'll be there accomplishing through me. And so it actually puts more on his nature than it does on my capability. But we say, well, I'm so capable because God's for me. I can go overthrow everything. And so trust is, I think, is the foundational level of prayer and the spiritual life. It has to be. And it's not that I trust. It's not like, I would say it this way. I don't have to inherently trust Murray.
Oh, really? What?
But I trust the Father. If I trust the Father, then I can trust the Father in Murray as well. And so when I say to Murray, hey, let's do a podcast together, or whatever, or anything, any kind of issue that you and I are working through in the context of our friendship or our podcast or whatever, then I can trust that the Father is going to work through Murray and he's going to work through me, and we can trust each other in that sense because we trust him. Not so much because I can trust Murray. And so my trust has to rest first in him. It can't rest in the system, in the person, in the organization, in the leader. It has to rest in the Father. And anytime it rests first in the person, the organization, the system, the denomination, the leader, whatever, I'm going to be sorely disappointed in something. It'll always happen. It has to happen. And if I don't have that root in myself where I'm trusting the Father and the Father in me, then it totally throws me when something happens. So I can only learn to accept in a way that's healthy and thriving and spiritually mature if I'm accepting what the Father has brought my way, not learning to accept what everyone around me says. Right? I'm not trusting in the sense that point one, learn to accept, that I accept everything the leader tells me to do. I trust the Father and that he'll work through everything, even though I don't understand it. And in that sense, then I have an actual strength within me that is going, well, what is he asking me to do, and what am I trusting him with? And learn to receive and welcome doesn't then mean I receive and welcome everything a leader says to me. So I'll use an example from the Desert Fathers in that sense. There's a story of a particular monk who finds a spiritual father, and the spiritual father is essentially a drunkard and an abusive spiritual father. Berates this young man and does all kinds of manipulative and abusive tactics towards this young man, right? And at the same time, there's another spiritual father down the road who is kind of caring a little bit for this young man. He hears the stories, but in the context of the Desert Fathers, he's submitted to this abusive spiritual father, right? And as I'll simplify it, but there's a tender father and an abusive father. The abusive father is the one that's quote unquote caring for the young man. So years pass by. The young man has told the tender father all the things that the abusive father's doing, and eventually the young man passes away, and then the father passes away, right? And so I get there's a lot more to this story, but this is the bare bones of it. And what happens is the tender father, who knew both of them, essentially has, by divine revelation, the insight that the young monk was standing before the throne interceding for his father the whole time. Right? Would you save him and soften him and all of this? And his death and the conviction that hit the abusive spiritual father afterwards radically transformed him, and within a few weeks he's passed away, and he's repented, and the great judge of the universe is lenient on him because of his repentance and because of the prayers of the young man, right? And so the young man was subject to an abusive situation, but the Lord used it all in order to convict the heart of the abuser. And so there's a redemptive outcome there, right? So that it's not so much that the young man trusts the abusive father. He trusts that the father has led him to a place and he has a purpose in what he's going through. So he learns to accept, he learns to receive, and he welcomes what the father is doing through him, right? And there is an eventual outcome that the Lord does have a plan. I'm not saying that means that to learn to trust is to put yourself in that situation, but there's a different perspective and a higher perspective. And sometimes we don't see the whole picture. So I don't know what you think about that one, Murray, but that one's always kind of struck me.
You got an hour? I mean,
I
there's.
I remember, but I do remember this. I remember this before you say that a good friend, a mutual friend of both of ours, asked you, "Hey, I've been asked to join an elder board at a church, and what do you think I should do?" And Murray, what did you say?
Run for your life.
Yeah, that's right. That was good advice back then too.
I said, yeah, it'll damage your marriage. It's gonna, and that church blew up. One of the pastors got caught, went to jail.
Yeah.
Church blew up. Boy, and the best advice he ever got was that time of coffee asking that question, because he avoided all that.
No, he didn't. He became an elder of that church.
Oh, did he? Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought he didn't.
No, he became an elder of that church.
No wonder he's never talked to me again. I feel shame.
But he's still his marriage is good, and
he's a good guy.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. I really.
But I remember that conversation.
Was a mistake.
Murray told me to run.
Not have done it.
I might have told him.
And a different church, I might have said, I wouldn't give that advice to everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't know, knowing where that church was at and what was going on, I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's tough, it's tough, everyone. So trust. I mean, again, the Desert Fathers, for one, you gotta they're not thinking church like we're thinking church, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I was on staff at this one church that blew up, and this would be a typical staff meeting. When you go to staff meeting, you come. What is your ministry doing? How are you training your leaders?
Yeah.
How are you growing it? What difficulties you're overcoming? How are you planning for the next season? It's a planning, vision casting meeting. That's what it is. And I would say that's true for most teams. You're not talking about what's going on in your life, what's going on with your families. You're not doing that. You know, it's a business meeting, right? And some people out there are like, oh, that's not what mine are like. And eventually ours change too. So I'm not saying, but the problem is you got to understand that that's not how the early church is functioning, right? And even today, the Orthodox Church, like, they're thinking. So when you're submitting to somebody, they're thinking, how is theosis going to happen here? How is this person going to become like Christ to reign with him in bridal intimacy forever? And how, as a priest, am I involved in this process? Right? So, and again, you know, maybe things aren't so black and white, but so the idea is, so we think in our culture, we look at confession and go, oh my goodness, you know, you're going to tell some of your sins, and then they're going to give you penance to do, and it's going to be punishment. I mean, what's supposed to be happening is that the areas of your life you struggle in, you talk to the priest, and they pray for you, and they help you get better to heal your soul.
Right.
How are you going to overcome this area of your life?
Right.
And how are you going to become more Christ-like? And church is supposed to be a hospital that heals people. But, you know,
side note, see all the previous episodes about that.
Yeah. We see the church as either an institution that's building, like a CEO builds a corporation, or we think of things like that as, oh my goodness, that guy's going to just, it's all justice. It's all about judgment. It's all about law. And so we have two views right there that make it very difficult to look at Father Luke's points and go, oh, we understand what he's talking about.
Right.
We're so outside of the culture he's part of that one, we don't understand what he's talking about, because he's talking about trust in the process of becoming. Well, for us, it's very easy to talk about trust in the form of building and doing and relationships, my vision, my passion, what's my goal. Right. That's not what he's talking about at all. And it's easy to go there. So, you know, and I can give you lots of examples of that. Like I'll give an example, and I'm still trying to work it through to this day. So the one church I just mentioned, that church blew up. Pastor became gay, destroyed the church. So next church, let's start all over again. Let's do it again, right? So, you know, on staff, typical, you know, they're talking about vision and direction. And so, and you have to understand, most of the time on a staff, when you're there, your job is to protect and back up the senior pastor. That's your job, right?
Serve another man's vision. Yeah, serve another
there's always crises. Yeah. There's always something going on, and you got to circle the wagons, because there's always, you know, there's always something happening in somebody's marriage or family or sickness or warfare or whatever. And the senior pastor, and you know, you got to stand there. But what do you do when the senior pastor is the problem, right? And you've developed a culture where everyone goes, yes, sir, great sermon today. And you know, he didn't prepare that at all. He just stood up there and wung it, because he didn't even quote the Bible. What are you going to do? Because you know, when you're on staff, if you go, could we talk about that? Everybody looks at you and goes, is this fight worth it? Because if I join it, I'm out. So therefore, I'm going to back the senior pastor, even though he's wrong, because otherwise, right? So you're looking at how spiritual abuse forms, right? So, you know, saw this going on, quit going to the staff. I did that already for 7-8 years, not doing this again, right? So, so it got to the point of church splits going on a little bit, with some good reason in this case. And my son, who's very spiritually sensitive, I remember we walked into the back door of the church, and we're thinking it's all going to get better. Everyone's going to get along. Hope believes the best. Love, hope never fails, right? It's all going to work out in the end. And I remember Jesse was 12, and he says, I can't sit down in the sanctuary anymore. It's like people are dumping garbage on me. And now he doesn't know what's going on. The spiritual atmosphere is like that. So we sat up top. There was a little office area up there. just a little, not even a balcony, but just, a little walkway by the offices where you could look down in the sanctuary. So we sat up there, right? I'm running Samuel's mantle. I'm kind of involved. I should be there. So, I made him sit in that mess, believing it was going to get better for another 3.5 years until the pastor finally blew the church up and ended up divorcing his wife and going on medication.
Right.
So I was trusting what there, right? Was that trust blindly believing it's all going to get better, good for my family? Absolutely not. You want another 5 or 6 of those stories? I can tell you worse ones, right? So the idea that you trust the institution. Now, was God with us in the midst of that? Absolutely. Was he in the midst of it? Sure, absolutely he was. He is faithful and he carries our wounding and he walks with us and he weeps with us and and I would have done that way different now. But the reason I bring it up, so many of us are like, wow, okay, I've got to trust this is all going to work out. But look at Jesus. I have to, again, if the Orthodox point of view, you go to a doctor, you faint in front of them, he's going to slap you in the face because he hates you. No, he's trying to save your life, right?
Right.
But you see, one of the problems in our Western Christianity is we believe often is that love is peace at all costs. If I love, I'm going to put up all those because that's what love does, right? But I mean, if our kids were skipping school and smoking cigarettes, what would we do? I hate you now. I'm going to ground you. And to prove I hate you, I will ground you. Well, no. Why are you grounding them? Because you love them, right? So to say that discipline is not love, right? So that's another problem we have. That when we say trust, well, therefore I've got to keep my mouth shut. I can't make decisions. I've got to just let this happen. No, love is not being silent and not having a voice. That is not love, right? So when we're talking trust is bringing God and who he is in his fullness into the midst of things. And that can get really, really ugly, right? There's a verse in 1 Corinthians 5. It's somewhere around communion. And there's different versions of this. So you can dispute my version. But I remember Graham Cook talking about it. And the verse goes something like this. I hear there are divisions among you, and there must be division to show upon whom God's favor rests. How's that for an interesting verse, right? Because the way we took it back in the day was, well, Tale of Three Kings. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be Saul trying to keep the kingdom? Do you want to be Absalom stealing the kingdom? Or do you want to be David letting it go, right? So, well, absolutely you want to be David letting it go. And that probably was a good decision. But boy, oh boy, I have some real regrets about being silent and letting it go are not necessarily the same thing. Let's just say, right? So trust, I mean, what does this mean? This word. I mean, do we trust God implicitly on the journey? Yes. But does that mean that we don't have boundaries, that we don't ask questions, that we can go, no, I disagree, that we don't leave because it's not safe? No.
Right.
I mean, Paul rebukes Peter to his face in Galatians 3 publicly, right?
Right.
Would we call that trust? I would say the Bible does.
Yep.
So to say that trust is an emotional thing where we all get along because we're looking at peace at all costs, I would say that's not trust. I would say that's compromise. I would say love. Does it cover a multitude of sins? Yes. Does that mean we're not honest and real? And not at all. And there's a big problem in the Western church where we let things go and go and go and go because, well, love, but discipline and discipleship. I mean, let's just look at Jesus with the Pharisees or with Peter saying, get behind me, Satan. I mean, look at how Jesus, does that mean he doesn't love them? Well, not at all. Right. So again, back to, disciplining our kids. It's like when we consider trust. I mean, I'm a Mennonite. We used to have the big saying over the Mennonites when we were in Russia, the silent in the land. Just learn to keep your mouth shut. Don't stir things up, right? Look how that went.
Right.
So, So I mean, there's lots of this outworking on layers, and it's just important if you guys are listening, because when the Orthodox would say, if you dispute with your spiritual father, it's like the snake will wrap around your intestines and you'll never get free.
Right.
I mean, that's straight quote right out of, I think, Hesychus out of the Philokalia, word for word, pretty much. Right. So is that what we're saying here? Well, I'm sure not. I mean, St. Simeon the theologian would really agree with Hesychus there, but he's like, you got to be really careful who you make your spiritual father. And just so you know, everyone, for me, on my board, I've got, Steve is on my board, who's a spiritual father, the president of CMA, my spiritual father, who's walked with me since I was 23 and I'm like just about 60. I got lots of people speaking into my life. Right. So it's not like I'm like, okay, now I'm against, and I submit to these people just about we went through a big blow up in 2017 and I put myself in professional counseling, turned my whole ministry over to my board. Cause I'm like, am I judging people? Am I making wrong decisions? Am I right? And how do I know? I don't know. So therefore I've got to let go of control entirely. And meanwhile, there's people in my ministry handing me books on the Jezebel spirit about other people in my ministry. And they've sat and prayed together for 10 years, every Wednesday, just having tea, just to be a family. Right? So it was horrible. It was horrible. 2.5 years of that. 50% of my time was just conflict resolution. So, so the right thing to do is trust, let go of power. But, I thought in my ministry, I thought everyone else would do that too. Let's all let go of our power. Let's all get counseling. No, I'm right. Here's a book on the Jezebel spirit. Never talk to me again.
Right.
So, I mean, do you really want unity with somebody who would do that with you?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to trust them even though they've been in my ministry for 5 years, but they're attacking another person like that?
Right.
No. Right. So when we think trust still has to be built on integrity, on common values, common, how can two walk in agreement and how can two walk together unless they agree? I mean, what is trust here? And trust is that in the midst of this life, we're being formed into the image of Christ by what we go through with him as Jesus walks us to the house of the Father. That's trust. Does that mean now, how does that work out with my being in ministry, being in church, being with people? Depends on the people. I've walked again with my board and my spiritual father for 25 years, a lot of them. I've known Steve since 1991. I've known Brian West since 1984. He was my youth pastor. So I've got some good long-term relationships. But some of these other situations where working with a senior leader in particular, and this is one reason I bring this up, everybody, is that unfortunately, when you look at personality types, often visionary leaders, it's different. Pastors long to see people healed. Prophetic people want to hear. We all have flaws, but visionary leaders, unfortunately, with the CEO kind of apostolic, if you want to use that term. And there's lots of good. I think Che Ahn is like a fabulous apostolic leader. I think Bill Johnson's a good apostolic leader. I don't know him at all, but when you believe, and here's the problem, when you believe your vision is your gift from God, right? And that your vision, if you do it, therefore your vision is your intimacy with God. So God's given me this vision. So fulfilling the vision is intimacy. And then you recruit everybody to do that vision. And as a visionary leader, tend to be very friendly while they're recruiting. But after they recruited you, you're carrying the baby together. Therefore, you have intimacy. But a pastoral person, prophetic person, that's not intimacy. Time spent is intimacy. But that's not how they think. Well, you can see some real problems coming up in the future there because you're not on the same page of even what intimacy means.
Right.
And then once you get recruited for the vision and they think, okay, now we're doing the will of God. Well, what if their vision is just them? What if their vision is God brings the vision into a season of pruning?
Right.
Then what? What are you going to do? Well, trust, believe, serve. Well, you need to look at that very, very differently for the sake of your own mental health and figure out what you're called to do, right? With Jesus,
Yeah.
not necessarily what the system is calling you to do. They could be exactly the same things. They might not, right? But trust is the ability to walk with people and be open and honest, have them speak into your life. But at the same time, you need confirmation, you need fruit of the Spirit, you need to go back to scripture, you need inner witness, you need to go through all the tests. But when we talk about trust, you have to trust that somebody's helping you be made into the image of Christ, because that's a leader's job. And if that leader's job is only to see you serve a vision, I would be careful.
Yeah.
Because they should be somehow, even in the midst of working together, helping you become Christ-like.
Right.
And if they're not, they're only having you work. Remember when the disciples came back, Lord, we healed the sick, that even the demons submit to us. What did Jesus say? Don't rejoice in that.
Yeah.
Right? Rejoice, your names are written in heaven, meaning you are known in heaven. Rejoice that you're known in an intimate relationship with the Father. Rejoice in that. And if your leaders are helping you rejoice that you are intimately known by the Father, follow that leader. But if you're a cog in a machine to see anything happen, I would be very careful.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my 2 bits on trust with
trust. Yeah.
And everyone, yes, am I talking out of my wounding? I absolutely am. But there's such a high body count that when we have trust in, this is where the church is going. We're going to break through. We're going to overcome. The gates of hell will not prevail. And we're putting trust in slogans. Is that stuff going to happen? Yeah. But there's seasons, right? There's seasons of pruning. There's seasons of fruit bearing. There's seasons of training. So if you're trying to push breakthrough when God's like, now's the season of pruning, you ever try to pick raspberries in the winter?
Well, it seems to me that
it's not going to happen.
Yeah. It seems to me that I think one is that the concept of trust is contemporary concept of trust is misguided at best.
And see, that's the problem when we look at this, because that's I'm sure.
Yeah.
Again, not what Father Luke is talking. He's talking from an Orthodox view where the church is bringing healing to the soul.
But we're also talking about how people are going to hear this, right?
Well, the people that are listening to this are people who are in ministries like I've described or have been through it and have tried to believe the best in situations, because I know a lot of the people listening. I know what some of these people have been through. And so we need to address that. So we need to say, hey, listen, these are different things.
If we peel back the layers and go, let's simplify in the sense of, core elements of trust, right? Because again, as like, you described the kind of leader you would look at and go, I'm not going to trust that system, leader, or institution.
Well, John Arnott,
which is totally true. Totally true.
Yeah, I would say John Arnott said it really well. Maybe not just Arnott. Maybe John Wimber said this too. But never trust a leader without a limp.
Yeah, right. It's a great statement. Yeah.
You could sum it all down to the never trust a leader without a limp. When somebody has been through stuff, they have a lot more compassion on people.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I would say, I think the pushback I'd give to a statement like that would be never trust a leader ever. I just,
it could be
right. I can't look at, and let me try to describe this, right? Because, I can't look at and play, like I think about Jesus, and it says that Jesus did not entrust himself to the people because he knew what was in them.
What was in the hearts of men.
Right.
Yeah.
So he didn't entrust himself to anybody, but his trust in the Father never wavered, even on the cross.
Exactly. Not my will, yours be done.
Yeah. On the cross, into your hands I commit my spirit.
And see, that's the tricky part. I'll just say one thing here.
Yes.
See, that's the tricky part, because to go back with what you're saying, see, the ditch on the other side of the road here is the fact that, well, now if somebody does something I don't like, I don't have to follow them.
Yes.
If there's something going on here and it makes me uncomfortable, or I don't get what I want out of the church, therefore I shouldn't be here. Well, how are you becoming like Christ if there is no
Yes.
humility, there's no servanthood, there's no seeing what's in your heart? You see, that's the other tricky side here.
And I think,
because that's also a really big problem that pastors are dealing with, really good pastors who are wonderful people who people are in it just for them. And
I
that's
think
really hard too.
I think people that tend to think that way are probably people who, going back to what I said earlier, are probably people with an insecure attachment that has never quite been healed.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And so, Jim Wilder, working with Dallas Willard and stuff, and Life Model Works, we've had Michael Sullivan on, who's part of that organization, an ambassador of the organization now, and we're just now airing the episodes. So if you haven't listened to the Michael Sullivan stuff, you should go back and listen to it. Wilder, in his book Renovated, which is a fantastic book that anybody should read, hypothesizes that when you take the term hesed in the Old Testament, which is translated as the loving kindness of God, it's also translated as mercy, or the merciful kindness of God, or the tenderheartedness of God. It's translated a bunch of different ways in the New King James. Loving kindness is one of the ways that really captures the essence of the verse. And there's a number of, Lord, save me, have mercy on me, right? That's salvation and mercy go hand in hand. So his point in Renovated essentially is that the term hesed is essentially the human experience of secure attachment.
Oh, interesting.
And so if you were to take every place where, he says this isn't Renovated, if you were to take every place where the word hesed is used in the Old Testament and translate it as secure attachment, it would take on a richer meaning, and it would make total sense. And he gives a bunch of examples of that. There's just a myriad of examples.
Can you give one? Can you think of any?
I'll pull something up. Just give me a sec. Right. It's like if you go throughout the Psalms, right?
Well, there you go.
Right. The term is there all the time. Let's see. Examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my mind and my heart, for your loving kindness is before my eyes, and I've walked in your truth. Right. That word loving kindness is the word hesed. Right. So examine me and prove me, O Lord. Try my mind and my heart, for your secure attachment is before my eyes. Like, I'm securely attached to you, so you can see anything. I'm not scared of bringing myself before you because I'm securely attached to you. Right. That's
so that word often, again, because I've heard that the word, as the Orthodox Jesus prayer, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. That word really is mercy. That must be hesed in the Old Testament, and loving kindness, right?
Yeah.
See, but it's interesting. Like, I pray that prayer when I'm doing well, I can say mercy, right? But when I'm doing bad, or things are going wrong, I say mercy in my mind is, please don't kill me, because I make it a legal term, which, so it's interesting to think of it as loving attachment.
Yes.
Wow. That's quite a,
so you can go through any tender mercy, loving kindness. It's mercy. I usually, if I'm doing the Jesus prayer, usually say, be tender towards me. Because that's the term mercy really, it's essentially someone stooping down in kindness to lift you up. That's what the word itself means. It's not necessarily a legal word, although it could be extending that kind of tender affection from a judge to someone else. And but the word itself for mercy tends to mean the loving, tender affection of God. And his mercies are new every morning. His secure attachment is new every morning, right? It deepens and strengthens itself. So you can go through almost every place and look at it and replace that and go, there it is. And like I said, I like looking at the Psalms and doing that because there's so many examples in the Psalms. So the point is, so Jim Wilder's point is, salvation is a new secure attachment with the Father. That's what salvation is. And then we learn to live out of that place of secure attachment with the Father.
Hey man, that's
And
really nice. That's quite brilliant.
it makes a lot of sense, right? And rings true when you've had an experience of the loving kindness of God, right? It totally reworks your value system, right? Looking at the hierarchy of values that we've talked about. I can't remember the term. You have an experience, it shifts your values, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah.
blah, right? So salvation being a new secure attachment, and for many people, it's not framed that way, right? Salvation is a legal get out of jail free card.
That's right.
And now go to church, attend church, and eventually you get into this system where things that you described, where you're serving another man's vision, you're building the house, and all these kind of statements come out.
And everyone, again, the other side of the system isn't set up well for pastors either.
Yeah,
because
sure.
mean, in Western church culture, I know some really good pastors. They lose their building and their congregation halves or more.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have a Sunday school program, you can kiss another 30% of your church goodbye or more, right? And it's because you got to feed the beast. You got to feed the program. Well, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Well, all the people who and they don't necessarily want to do it either. But it's a way we've set we've set it up, right? It's the whole thing is so program based.
Yes.
It's not really relationally based in some ways. And I am very glad that my church the first church had a good Sunday school person for my kids. So don't get me wrong, but it's there's lots of facets to this, right? Yeah. It's very functional.
Well, and that's why I think if the conversation around trust centers around what are the character traits of a trustworthy person, we've missed the forest for the trees, because nobody is trustworthy. I'm not trustworthy to myself. I will make mistakes.
Yeah.
I will disappoint myself. Right. And,
if I can find this.
I'm even thinking about the beginning of the podcast when I made some changes to our scheduling, and threw Murray for a loop because I hadn't included him in those changes. I don't know if you remember that, Murray. And
vaguely,
but it was like, it was, you were, or shifting schedules and all of that. We're good friends, but then I would go, oh, I got something to come up, and you're like, hey, I scheduled this already, and we had to work through how do we work this out together and love and respect one another, right? I'm just saying, I can think of.
But see, that's what trust is built on, right?
Well, that's where I can say in myself, I have there are untrustworthy things in myself, as we were able to talk through those and figure out how to do things together.
But see, that's a really good point, because if you can, everybody's going to screw up. There's intention and there's outcome. And I think with a lot of things, we have to go, okay, this outcome, was this the person's intention? And I would say most of the time it wasn't, even around some really bad church stuff, right? Often people can have a really, really good intention. And I think we need to go often, with our friends and our spouses, what was their intention? Did they really mean it to work out this way? Like, that was not your intention, right? That was an outcome, but it wasn't your intention. And I think when you walk with people, trust is an earned thing. So I often say in counseling, you have to forgive people, but if somebody broke into my house, stole my stuff, I wouldn't give them a key the next day, because trust is an earned thing, right? Yeah. So, and so when somebody wants trust based on their position, their vision, whatever, come under my covering, how are they going to, trust is an earned thing. And, based on common value. So, for Josh and I, when you work with somebody who's like, hey man, I screwed up, I'm so sorry, you can trust that person, because how somebody responds to when they screw up, and everybody screws up, tells you who they are. It's not the screw up that tells you who you are. It's their response. Can they change? Can they be accommodating? Can they see your heart? Can they, if it's a bad situation, can they say, man, I'm really sorry. Like I totally saw that from my point of view. And that's how you can trust, if people are willing, everybody, including leaders, to look into their brokenness and go, hey, listen, everybody, I'm doing my best. I apologize. You can trust that leader, right? He's got a limp. And that's, trust is built on, they keep doing it wrong. Well, then, everybody's going to do it wrong. But what do they do about that?
Well,
right? Can they repent? Can they get help? Can they
Right.
let people in? Can they apologize? Can they, okay, I can trust you because I see somebody who's willing to live in the light.
I agree with everything you're saying, Murray. I just want to bring this to a different level. Okay.
Yeah.
Is trust. I would say trust isn't based on, I can't remember, how did you just say it, that trust is earned? I don't think it is. I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with you, but let me say it this way. Okay. I always love saying controversial things. You know that, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I don't think trust is earned. Okay. I think trust begins and is built on the third point of Father Luke's rule of trust. Be convinced that God watches you with love. And that's my whole point about the secure attachment, is trust can't even begin to be earned unless the foundation point in my life is a secure attachment with the Father.
Well, totally. I totally agree.
I can't even get to the point. So I'm thinking about this. I can't even get to the point where I can trust Murray unless I am convinced I'm loved by the Father and I can trust that he's working everything out. So like when we went through a calamitous church situation about almost 10 years ago now, 7-8 years ago, and Murray, you're obviously very, very well aware of that situation, right? The leadership of that particular church proved themselves to be very, quote unquote, untrustworthy based on how they navigated the situation, based on what happened, whether it was the person responsible for what happened or whether it was how the leaders responded to the situation, right? Proved themselves untrustworthy in all of the metrics that you would gauge trustworthiness, right? But none of that threw me in who I was. I mean, it was a difficult situation, but because I have this root of trust in the Father, I had a conversation. One of the last messages I gave to that church before we moved away from the area was, you can question everything that this particular leader who fell taught you, but you can never question what the Father did through them. Yeah. And because that's something he established, right? And so the metric isn't, should I still trust that person or not trust that person, or were they trustworthy or not trustworthy? Ultimately, it comes down to, I trusted the Father in all these things, regardless of how difficult the situation was that I was put under, because I was on staff with that church, is that the Father worked it all out for good and made me a more Christ-like person because of it. And because I have a secure attachment with him, I was able to navigate that because of it. And so I said to Aaron at one point, I would be friends with that person again. And Aaron thought my wife thought I was absolutely crazy for saying that. I'm not friends with them at this point. The opportunity has never presented itself. And even though I was ridiculously hurt by them and everything went totally awry with them, but it's not because I would trust them to be a friend. It's because if the Father presented the opportunity for me, I trust that the Father has my best interest in mind and has a purpose and a plan. And so I would be friends with them again, and I would open myself up to them again. But I wouldn't do it.
Would you work for them again?
But that's a whole different conversation then.
Because they'd have to earn that trust.
Because but if I have a dream and the Father says do it, or I have a prophetic word or something, I would have to consider it, even if they hadn't earned it, because of what the Father had said. Because now this is all hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
Obviously it's all hypothetical. My point is just simply saying that if I'm looking for the person to establish trust before I trust them, not even in that situation, right? But let's just say in a situation I just meet the person. If I'm looking for the person to establish trust, the problem is my attachment. It's not the person, and it's not whether or not they can maintain or earn my trust. The problem goes way further back, that I probably have an insecure attachment from my childhood that convinces me either to be afraid of every relationship, to avoid every relationship, or to be anxious in every relationship. And the root that's being developed in me, because I'm convinced the Father watches me in love, is that I can actually trust in each circumstance, and I can give myself in each circumstance. And then now, if this person demonstrates to me they're going to take advantage of me or hurt me or whatever, then I can pull back from the relationship, because they're obviously not they're not trustworthy. But that is all I'm trying to say, is that the trust factor begins in being convinced the Father watches you with love. And so many people on the face of the earth, whether they're Christian or not, grew up in a home where they did not have a mother or father that watched them with love, and they have no idea what it looks like to be secure in themselves because of it. And people grew up in an environment where they learned that in order to navigate relationships well, I either have to avoid hard things, I have to be afraid of hard things, or I have to be anxious over hard things. And not even hard things, but just being relationally vulnerable. And so the Father comes along and goes, I'm going to create a new secure attachment in you based on loving kindness and affection. And now the Jesus prayer, all these things that point us to him, develop within us the capacity to actually trust people who we don't know if they're trustworthy or not, but we can give ourselves to them. Now, again, it's another conversation if they go on an abusive streak and hurt all these people, right? But I still trust the Father, and I'm okay in myself because he's developed security within me, right? And I still trust that even though all these things have happened, and even as calamitous as it was, and that the Father is going to lead me and guide me through it, and I'm going to turn out okay. And like I mean, I remember, man, for months going through that situation, I would sit in prayer each morning and go, God, I don't want to wall myself off to the difficult emotions that I'm going through, right? Pain, rejection, anxiety, despair, all the stuff that was happening. I don't want to wall myself off to these things. So I'm going to open myself and feel these before you. And I know that you're feeling these things too. You think about God regretting making Saul king, right? He has deep emotional, in that sense, deep emotional turmoil, right? Not commenting on whether or not he's sovereign or not, but I'm opening myself up to those and going, God, I want to be, I would say, God, I want to be aware of your pain. I want to be aware of my pain. I want to be aware of the people's pain. That was my prayer every morning, because I don't want to be cut off from it. I want to be aware of your pain, my pain, and the people's pain. And eventually the Father said to me, that's nice.
Oh, shoot.
He said to me in prayer, that's nice. He said, but your pain, my pain is not your pain to bear. And so that I agree. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I agree with all the things that you were saying. And then wanting to pull it back to, but we can't even hope to get to a place of evaluating trustworthy or not. If I haven't had that strong root of affection and tenderness developed in my relationship with the Father, and I see that he's watching me daily from the lens and eyes of love, and now I have a secure attachment with him, and it's reframing how I see my interaction with everybody around me. And when it comes to the guideposts of the spiritual life, that has to be one of the major ones.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, it wouldn't be
people are
administered if I didn't believe this was.
Yeah, absolutely. When people are convinced that salvation is either a moral or ethical thing, which we've talked about, or a legal justification, it's like it leaves people so hooped in actually rebuilding security and who they are before the Father, and even being able to get to the place where they trust, can I tell if this is a good leader or not, or a good person or not? And so we go through what are the qualifications are a good leader, but sometimes I want to go back and go, well, like, how are you developing loving kindness in your own heart before the Father? And then before we can even begin to give a litmus test for what it looks like to trust someone, right? So, yeah.
This quote out of The Orthodox Way, I really I really like. I'm just going to quote them.
Yeah, then we'll end with that because I have an appointment.
Yeah, Christ's suffering and death have then an objective value. He has done something for us we should be altogether incapable of doing without him. At the same time, we should not say that Christ suffered instead of us, but rather that he has suffered on our behalf. The Son of God suffered unto death, not that we might be exempt from suffering, but that our suffering might be like his. Christ offers us not a way around suffering, but a way through it.
Yeah.
It's not substitution, but saving companionship. And, through all these things that we go through, that's the truth of the nature of God.
Yeah.
Saving companionship.
That's a good way.
And, but, you have to have this idea of what the nature of God is.
That's
which
right.
is what you're talking about. So,
Yeah.
But that's where it takes you. But
yeah, I think that when you reframe it through saving companionship, that's what the salvation journey is. It's like, oh, something is being developed in me, and there's a resilience within me that wasn't there before. And now it's not so much, do I trust the system, the pastor? Because I think all that stuff comes because I don't have the secure attachment. And people put their place in put their trust in misguided places because it's not there with the Father. And part of that's the system, part of that's the culture and the environment that they're raised in. It's never been shown to them that the way is saving companionship. And so how do they develop that? How is it ever developed? Right? It's well, you said a prayer, and so now you need to attend church, and then eventually you go, well, I put all my trust in the system, I put all my trust in the culture and the environment and the vision, and it's like, yeah, well, you never should have done that in the first place.
Yeah.
But that's a much bigger picture, right? That's reframing. Like I'll go back to what I said a couple episodes ago, that the popular notion of salvation is essentially witchcraft. That's one of my favorite. Actually, your response to that was, oh,
yeah, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's that beautiful saving companionship, and that's what establishes trust. And trust starts between the Father and I, and develops something deep within, and then I have the resilience to walk forward. But if it's reframed that way, hopefully my trust never goes into the system, the governance, the political outcome, the vision casting, and the leader. And if it does, as as Murray's described, the Father's good enough to work through all those things to get us to where we need to go, or where he wants us to go anyway. Yeah. And for Murray, it's Eden's Way Farm Sanctuary. So caring for a couple little puppies.
With puppies.
Yeah.
As of today.
Yeah. So as always, I think we'll call it to a close at that point. I'm sure my wife is tapping her foot, waiting for me to go upstairs.
Yes.
That's
right.
That's always
a build trust. You want good intention here, my friend.
That's
right. You're going to reap an outcome.
That's right. So Murray, as always, such a pleasure doing this with you, and everybody that's been tuning in, God bless.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.